What's up everyone, Scordello here. Welcome to my studio. Today on Twitch we painted this. Took about 2.5 hours and we mixed all the colors ahead of time. You actually get to witness my brand new 2001 Space Odyssey t-shirt in gray. And what you're not witnessing is my hair because it looks really bad. Special shout out to Ambient Empire for letting me use their awesome music for the backing of the video. And yeah, I think that's it. Let's get to it.
Okay, welcome to the channel again. So when I usually start a painting, I like to rough everything in, whether it's blocking in big shapes or using, in this case, the rigger brush just to establish some basic lines in angles. That's actually really big for me lately, is trying to figure out, while I'm looking at the reference, what my angles are and try to spice them up so they're not always going in the same direction. You can see in the foreground I made a really strong diagonal angle, which I think is really nice. But sometimes these change. I don't always do the same thing, and the painting actually changes quite a bit, as you'll see. But anyway, so now I'm laying in the second tier, which basically has some trees. Oh, by the way, I'm adding a little Gamsol into my paint just to thin it. Another question I get asked a lot is, what are you painting on? This painting's actually done on a wood panel. I think I got them at Michael's for, I think it was like a 6-pack for maybe like under $10. So they're not the greatest quality, but I think once you, gesso it a couple times, and then I used a flat gray acrylic paint just to, just to give it a little contrast right off the beginning. I think it makes your colors pop pretty good. Sorry if some of this audio is actually popping. It's because I don't have a pop filter for my mic right now. Anyway, so I started sketching in some clouds, and now I'm in front of the camera, and now I'm back. So we're sketching in the clouds, and I'm just trying to be aware of the shapes I'm making. You'll see that I sketched that cloud over that back mountain ridge, and I think I got rid of it later on. And actually, one thing I want to point out is, like, if you are trying to get something to look believable in terms of like atmospheric perspective, if you have two lines that are running parallel next to each other, in this case it would be the cloud and that mountain range, it can kind of flatten your painting out. So I would recommend not doing that. And actually, I'll show you guys the finished painting in a photo at the end of this, but I didn't actually get rid of that until after I did this video, so I apologize. Okay, so quickly, I am laying in the background, which, believe it or not, is not pure white. It's actually white with a little bit of phthalo blue, a little bit of burnt umber. And another thing too, I like to mix my colors ahead of time. So if you can't see my colors right now or my palette, but I prefer to do it this way because I know that if my colors look good on the palette and there's like good harmony happening, then chances are it'll translate on the painting. Yeah, so now I'm laying in the distant mountain, which has a little bit more green, as you can see in comparison to the sky. So I'm just let this play so I can see what I'm doing here. Oh yeah, so same thing, just putting in more distant mountains. Some of this video, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was actually streaming on Twitch. I was probably talking to the viewers. Yeah, so now the next layer is slightly closer, more saturated, but still notice that it's blue. I have not really added any green, any yellow really. Oh, and also this video is sped up 5 times the speed. I figured that was probably pretty good because, again, there's times where I just sort of stare at it and trying to figure out what I want to do. But yeah, so the brush you're seeing is a round sable brush, and I've actually started using sables more with my paint because with a little bit of Gamsol, I think it really does make a nice soft mark, and I really enjoy that on the panel. Oh, another thing too, shout out to Geneva oil paint. They actually already have medium in their paint, so they're already pretty thinned out, which I really enjoy. It's very fatty, oily paint, and it's so nice to work with Mark Carter over at Geneva does just a fantastic job with his paint, and I highly recommend them. Okay, so anyway, now I'm bringing in some orange in the foreground, and I wanted to jump around a little bit to illustrate that, I don't always know what I'm doing per se, but I know that if I enjoy my color relationships early on, it kind of lifts my spirits, so that's what I'm doing. Just moving around and just making sure that I like, the colors I'm using. Okay, so I figured this space to the left, I'm adding in, looks like a little bit of phthalo blue, cad yellow, ultramarine blue, and a tiny bit of burnt umber. I may have added a little bit of white into that too, but again, just trying to make sure my colors are working. Okay, this tier of depth is got a little bit more blue, as you can see. Oh, actually, I was new to this, and I think my camera has a timer that just shuts off. So you have to apologize, it kind of jumped ahead, but this tier has just got more blue in it, basically. It's just like a darker green. And yeah, so hopefully I can figure out why my camera did that next time. Okay, so along the skyline, I'm just adding in a little bit of blue, just to try to give some contrast. Because believe it or not, that's not pure white up there. I know it kind of looks like that, but it's really not. So I'm just adding a little bit of blue next to where the clouds are going to be, just to give it a little bit of contrast. Okay, I must have gotten up. Nature calls. Alright. I think we're going to progress. You can actually see where the paint kind of dripped down a little bit on the top of that sky because I was using a good amount of Gamsol. I try to keep it thin in the beginning just so that I can kind of get the paint around, but now I'm getting thicker. The brushes I'm using here is the Rosemary Eclipse Comber. It's really soft, and I think it makes some really nice marks. It's great for blending too. Okay, getting back to it. Oh yeah, I was mixing up that color on the left. Yeah, so that color I think has got phthalo blue, burnt umber, and a little bit of white. And actually, burnt umber is a great color when you're using blues, because burnt umber is like a red-orange kind of. So you add that into the blue, and you got complementary opposites, and they're gonna sort of gray each other, or desaturate, if you will. So it's a good combination to use. I love having burnt umber on my palette for that reason. Okay, so I'm working on the cloud that eventually I actually get rid of, so I apologize about putting it in there. But like I said, if you can see that parallel cloud with that mountain, it just, your eye looks at it and it's like, oh, two parallel lines, and it just instantly flattens the perspective, so I'm glad I ended up getting rid of it. Apologize about, I don't know if you can hear my girlfriend upstairs, but she is ranting about something. But we're not going to tell her that. Try to keep these videos real for you. I think I was adding in just some lighter values in those clouds. You're going to notice that I changed those shapes quite a bit. Yeah, we'll go back and modify shapes if I feel like, they're not working. Sometimes, like, I'll overwork things. Like, looking back on it now, maybe I shouldn't have touched the clouds at all, because I kind of liked how they were bold shapes. That's another thing I'm trying to get better at too, is, like, not overworking my shapes. Like, you got like a good shape going, and then you go back in and you start messing with it, and I don't know about you guys, but sometimes you just end up making it worse. So I'm trying to get better at making a mark and leaving it and moving on, at least until you get the whole thing blocked in, because then you'll see how all the shapes sort of relate to each other. More pointless cloud working that will not make the final cut. Anyway, I hope you guys are having a good day. I know, sometimes these videos can kind of like hopefully get your creativity going. And for me personally, I'm someone who's always trying to learn, and I think doing these videos is going to help me learn. I mean, you learn by doing, and hopefully you guys enjoy this, and I can get some more videos loaded. Oh yeah, also if you guys want to check me out, I do stream this live on Twitch .tv/Scrodello. Scrodello has been my handle for probably a good 6 years. So yeah, the Italian fish. Okay, so I'm starting to add a little bit more blue into that horizon line, the mountain line, I should say, in the background. Just kind of blending a little bit. I haven't done much blending. Everything's been very direct, right? And I like that because it really forces you to mix color, which, you know, when I first started off painting, I'd always just kind of like throw some paint on there and kind of, you know, mush it together, and hopefully it, you know, turns out good in the end. And, you know, a lot of the time you can do that. There's nothing wrong with mixing on your canvas, but I find that it's much easier to kind of think a little bit more about your colors, you know, and be a bit more aware of what you're doing. Naturally, the background's going to have more white in it because it's further away. Another thing I like to point out too, the background is it's got a lot of white in it, so, and it's the furthest thing away, so you want to make sure that everything that's coming forward has a little bit less white as it comes forward and more saturation. I think that really helps with the depth. Okay, so I think I switched over to a smaller sable round. I'm just trying to mess around with the clouds, I think, at this. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, at one point something clicked. I don't know, maybe yeah, like right there, just kind of smudging it in. If you guys haven't used Geneva oil paints, I really recommend them because they're very opaque, so it really forces you to have to use color. I think the colors that are transparent in the palette are probably just the burnt umber. Oh, actually, no, I'm sorry, the ultramarine blue is transparent as well. Actually, I guess the phthalo blue too, but phthalo blue is currently unavailable right now. I think Geneva had a big electrical fire, and so a lot of their products are not available right now, and they make some excellent products, so I really hope you know, they're able to make phthalo blue again, because I really enjoy their phthalo blue. I'm not sponsored by Geneva. I know a lot of my Twitch viewers make that joke, oh, you know, like, when are you gonna get sponsored? It's like, well, I just really enjoy their paint. So okay, so a couple things. You'll see that I'm just modifying some of the colors already, and when I mix a big batch of my color, I'll make swatches so I remember how to mix the color if I forget, but I mostly just modify those colors with the primaries that Geneva makes. You know, I might shift something a little bit more red, I might shift something a little bit more blue, maybe I'll add colors together to neutralize them, but I usually try to use the colors I mix as like my base, and then I kind of just modify those. Yeah, so I think I'm darkening the tree line right there. Let's see here. Just keeping up with my 5 times speed. Yeah, so I think I started getting into the foreground because I was like, oh, you know, I haven't done anything with it yet. Actually, another thing I want to point out too, the foreground is something where I thought, well, you know, it's closer to you, so you need to have more detail. But the thing is about detail, you don't have to get a smaller brush to suggest detail. A lot of it is just color variation, right? You're gonna have less color variation in contrast in terms of a landscape further away. The combinations are usually going to be simpler further away. There's not going to be values that are as dark, but in the foreground, you know, you can still use a very large brush and just get a little bit darker, and, you know, just have more saturation with like the, you know, the yellow ochres and like the saturated greens. But even more than that are the darks. Like the darks are going to be a little bit darker and more saturated. This one's interesting because the trees in the midground are pretty dark. Actually, they're probably darker than anything I have in the foreground. But regardless, the trees are still pretty much one color. Whereas if you look in the foreground, I've got more variety of color. And that creates the illusion of detail. And it's something that's taken me a long time to realize. Like, you know, use big brushes. Don't be scared to use big brushes, because it has a way of unifying your entire painting. You know, if you're going to use a really small brush, maybe use a small brush the whole time. But I don't know. Personally, I like using big brushes. I think you can get a painting done faster. You can lay down color, and you're less finicky with a big brush. You're just like, okay, here we go. We're doing this, and there you go. I don't know what I'm doing with that palette knife. Sorry about that. But we will get back to the painting, I'm sure. Here we go. Oh, you know what it was? I was mixing up a color, lighter value for the foreground. I wanted to bring a little bit more light, as you can kind of see. There we go. Yeah. So what I've done was I added more yellow to the foreground, just to indicate, a little bit more light that's catching on that plane. But another thing is I don't go overboard with it. The colors underneath they're really nice, and I don't want to wash those out. It's just meant to accent certain parts. Something, again, I'm always trying to learn, when to stop. Question I get a lot on Twitch, when do you know your painting's done? And I think your painting's done when you can look at the whole thing and be like, I don't know what else to do. I'm literally, I could sit here and just keep adding stuff, but a lot of the time that's when you ruin a painting. Okay, so I'm working on the pointless cloud again. I think I was just trying to bring out the light, which actually started to work, but it just flattens the composition, so we don't want to do that. Again, notice the parallel cloud with the parallel mountain range. Something that you really want to try to avoid, I think, especially in the distance, right? Like, that cloud is covering, like, a really critical part. Like, your eye wants to go further back, and you're just kind of, like, stopped. And I think the biggest reason, even besides just them being parallel, is they're actually very similar in value, the mountain and that cloud. And I think the cloud is probably a little bit darker on the base of it if you look, but I think it's unnecessary. And there's nothing wrong in getting rid of a part in your painting. Like, it's just a painting. You can always paint it back, and you can always wipe it away or paint over it. So oil painting is probably the most forgiving medium. I know a lot of people would think acrylic is, but I think oil is incredibly forgiving because it's wet. It stays wet for a very long time, and you can manipulate, move things around, so on and so forth. I think I was just lightening that's what around that mountain range in the distance, just to make the mountains come forward a little bit more because it's lighter in the back. Okay, I think we're getting close, guys. I think I'm just adding in some blue, a little phthalo blue, a little ultramarine, and then the white, just to give some variety in the background, a little bit more blue.